They have it's a completely different China. But after Tiananmen Square, people were not allowed to talk. I educate Chinese students that study at Northwestern. I live next to Northwestern University about Tiananmen Square. They never heard about it.
Yeah, and isn't that
Never heard
interesting? And
it's not
that was
allowed.
like, I think the Tiananmen protest was like 1989, something like
Correct.
that, right? Yeah.
Correct, 89, exactly that. So, but it's not allowed to mention in China, and they don't teach about that.
Dr. Zafra Lerman, you are a chemist, an educator, and a peace builder, and you are the founder of Malta Conferences Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about the Malta Conferences Foundation, what that is and what it's for?
Okay. After I chaired for the American Chemical Society, that is the largest, most influential society, one subject society in the world. For 26 years, the Subcommittee on Scientific Freedom and Human Rights. And with this committee, I did a lot of work in human rights in the Soviet Union. I risked my own life, went to the Soviet Union, went after midnight in dark alleys to meet with dissidents. It was illegal. Then at 2 a.m., I would give a seminar in some attic. Was illegal. I distributed scientific material. Was illegal. I was collecting the CVs and resumes of the people, 50 people that I managed to get from my seminar, and people that were in jail or hard labor in the Soviet Union, in Siberia, to bring back to work on their behalf. And then came September 11, and during the same period, the Intifada, the uprising in the Middle East, was at the height. Every day there was suicide bombing in buses, in restaurants in Israel. And I told the board that it's time that we concentrate now on the Middle East. And we continued our work on human rights. I spent a lot of time in China after Tiananmen Square and all that. All that is in my book. Oh, I forgot to bring a copy to show it. So I'll have to take a minute after that to bring and show my book, because the title of the book is Human Rights and Peace, a Personal Odyssey. And this describes in details all these activities. So my idea was to bring under one roof scientists from all the Middle East countries, all of them, no exception. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, the Palestinians, Jordan, Egypt, all of them. The rest, you can look at our website everywhere, all the list, if you don't know who are all the 15 countries in the Middle East. Bahrain, the Emirates are there, Turkey is there, everybody is there. And my idea was to bring them together under one roof, no spouses, no accompanying members, like in every other conference we have. And then you have to spend time running to entertain your spouse. And chemists know that when you dilute a solution, the reaction is much smaller, it's slower. So my explanation was that we cannot dilute the solution because we need a much faster interaction. And so the Americans were not too happy with this part, no accompanying members. I had to fight on that. And it was very interesting how What do you mean? What do you mean? So, and with several Nobel laureates. And this is a very unusual part because usually, like in the American Chemical Society, from now on, I will refer to the American Chemical Society as ACS. It's too long to say the whole name. It's called ACS. ACS, every national meeting, we have two a year. We have 15,000 people. We would have one or two Nobel laureates. I wanted six with our group that must be below 100 in order for the interaction to take place. And in the beginning, everybody looked at me. It's the heights of the Intifada. Everybody looked at me like I'm out of my mind with my suggestion. And the question was, how will you get six Nobel laureates? I answered, I'll make six phone calls. And he said, what if the person says no? I said, I'll stay on the phone till the person will say yes. And it was really silence in the beginning. It was very interesting to see the reaction because nobody ever thought about something like that. We are doing it for so many years. There were few attempts to copy, but nobody was successful. So we are still doing. The objective for that was that I thought it will take a form it will give a form for all these people to see what unites them than what separates them. It
Yeah.
give a forum for the people to stop demonizing the unknown other. And it will give a forum to develop important collaborations that one country cannot solve this problem alone. Like water, for example, the lines on the map that were put by the British in the Middle East are not recognized by nature, by the environment. So the aqueducts where the water goes underground, it doesn't know where to stop. Where is Jordan? Where is Israel? Where is... You have to work in collaboration in order to solve the water problem, the air pollution. One country cannot walk alone. The wind is the wrong direction, and you must have collaboration.
Yeah.
And so and important was that we would develop a curriculum for science that will bring everybody up in the field of science. Now you will ask me why science? So I'll tell you why science. We call it science diplomacy. And science diplomacy can succeed where other kinds of diplomacy fail. Why? Science does no borders. Science doesn't see languages, religion, culture. It's extremely international. And as I like to say, a chemist in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I'm glad there is a Bethlehem in Pennsylvania because I can give my example. So a chemist from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and a chemist from the real Bethlehem in the West Bank can communicate very well their idea in chemistry without even needing any language. And this is why science can succeed where other diplomacy cannot succeed. So the Malta conferences, we had already 10 of them. And we have it every 2 years because we have to raise all the money to pay for everybody to
Right.
come. We don't want the people to have to go to universities or anywhere talking about this conference and asking for money. Now, I was on the executive committee. This was in the early 80s of the Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation. And after Israel and Egypt signed the peace agreement or no war agreement because there were not relationship, but there was not a war, we thought that we should bring together Israeli agronomists and Egyptian agronomists. And now I'm talking about the Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation, not the Malta. But here I learned a lot how to make Malta successful, and therefore
Yeah.
I'm talking about that. And the idea was in Israel, there are two agricultural settlements that are working very well. One of them is the kibbutz, that is a complete commune, and this most of the people know what it is. But there is another one that is called moshav. And moshav has a very different structure. Everybody is on their own. They are not a commune, but all the produce and the milk and the eggs and all that goes to a central place, and this is where they work together. This is together for everybody. So we thought that this will be a good structure for Egypt. Now, why did we think Egypt needs it? Because there will be, so I'm a scientist, suddenly I'll give a lot of history here, but
I don't mind. You could go. I could talk history, science. I could talk all these subjects all day long. So you go right ahead, and I'm totally following along. So
okay, so the Russian built for the Egyptian the Aswan Dam. When they built the Nile, the main river, was flooding every year, and the flood was going mile. The Nile had a lot of excellent nutrients that were important for the agriculture.
yeah,
When the Russian built the Aswan Dam, the Nile stopped flooding, and then it became arid land. So our idea was that we will use the Israeli knowledge how to make the desert bloom by working together, and this way there will be collaboration between the Egyptian and the Israelis, and we will move something. By the way, this settlement is still there. It's on the way to Alexandria. It's the Marriott area because, oh, I don't know what's now USAID, but USAID took it over after that and
yeah.
supported it. So on June 10, 1982, we had this meeting in Ajaccio, Corsica. And the Egyptian came, the Israeli came, and sure enough, all the Americans that gave the money for the Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation, and we were meeting, and uh, when the Egyptian delegation came, one of the people there was uh, Mahmoud Mahfouz, Dr.
Okay.
Mahmoud Mahfouz. He was the health minister for President Sadat. And he was an MD, PhD, was the head of the cancer research. And I had a lot of conversation with him. And he said to me, in order to succeed in the Middle East, there is one rule. Everybody is equal. If the reason that till now nothing succeeds is because usually it's the Americans come and say, look what we can teach you, look what we can do for you, will not work.
Right.
Everybody has to be equal. And I said this will be the most important part in the Malta Conference. So the Nobel laureate and the graduate students stay in the same hotel, and we don't have class citizenships in the Malta Conference. Everybody eats together.
Yeah, and
Every
so that way you don't have the us versus them
There is
mentality. Yeah,
no, and there is no, this is a poor country, this is a rich
right.
country. The Palestinian told me that in every conference they go, they get a waiver for a registration and all that, and always they hear, oh, our poor brothers, the Palestinians. They said it's the only conference we are equal to everybody else, and we are not the poor brothers. So
That's awesome.
it's a very important lesson. And I knew that we are on the right side because when the Iraqis came, and those were men 50, 60 years old, and they had tears in their eyes when they came to talk to me, and they said, all our life we heard, we studied in school, that the Israelis are monsters. They even don't look like regular human beings. They are horrible people. And here we meet wonderful people, great scientists that want to collaborate with us. Why were we lied for so many years?
Yeah,
This is the purpose of this conference,
exactly. It gives so basically science is like a jumping off point for bigger discussions.
for
And
sure.
and it's universal in that we all science belongs to the people. Education belongs to the people, everyone. And so in my mind, I'm envisioning the Malta conferences as a place where everyone can get together and share their ideas without any preconceived notions of failure or casting out of other people. It's not us versus them. And it absolutely, science diplomacy is an awesome word to describe it because, like, ultimately, this is a starting point for everyone to get talking, right?
It's exactly what you say. And to see it, it's it's almost unbelievable to see when it ends, people have tears in their eyes. Everybody hugs and kisses each other. It's like a family reunion ended, and the people have to say goodbye till next time. And
Right.
it's really, you cannot believe the feeling because I remember that we had one that was very, it was not all, the pandemic was already in the end.
Yeah.
But I said, oh my God, so many people are hugging me, kissing me. I hope I'm not getting the COVID from all that. But you cannot believe. Now, why Nobel laureates? The structure of the conference is that we have a plenary lecture that always is up to date, some new great discovery. Then we have interactive workshops on titles like water, energy, food security, nexus, climate change, biological, chemical, nuclear, security, nanotechnology, medicinal, different structure. It's a bottom-up conference, so the
Right.
participants decide what are the subjects that we should have our workshop on, and everybody in this workshop can present their work, and there is a discussion, and we have a guided poster session too. But then the plenary lectures. So what do we do? It was a question, who will give plenary lectures? If we will say, ooh, this and this are excellent scientists, this means that we already say that this country, their science is better than another country, and we lose the effect of equality.
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea that only Nobel laureates will give the plenary lecture. Then I leave the problem of the making decision for Sweden. They pick up the Nobel laureates. But then in 2005, suddenly Israel started getting Nobel laureates. So I asked the participants, how do we treat them? As Israelis or as Nobel laureates? If they are treated as Israelis, they cannot give plenary lecture. If they are Nobel laureates, then they can give plenary lecture, and unanimously everybody said Nobel laureates, so
Yes.
they can give a plenary lecture. But this is how sensitive it has to be for the equality, because this is the success. And therefore, the Malta Conference is the only platform in the world that brings under the same roof for 5 days scientists from all these countries,
That's
because every nuance is taken into account.
that's pretty
Every
badass, actually. I mean, that's amazing. So how long has this the multi conference has been going on? When was the first one? What year?
The first one was 2003. This was the heights of the Intifada. And really, to be honest, ACS suddenly started getting shaking a little bit. Now you will ask Malta, why is it called Malta? It's called Malta because the first two conferences were in Malta. Why Malta? Malta is a small island, and when security started coming up and everybody was shaking, and they said, in this situation, it's a little bit scary. I thought that an island will be safer than a mainland. Eh, Another thing was that by that time in 2003, there were very few direct flights to Malta. Maybe there was only from Rome, London, and Frankfurt. And it took practically a day to get to Malta for everybody from the participants, from the US for sure, but from the participants. And during that period, the people from the Middle East needed a transition visa, especially from the Arab countries, not the Israelis. They needed a transition visa in order to fly from Rome or Frankfurt or any other. So it was a very complicated procedure to get to Malta. So my calculation was, will it be worse for terrorists to spend a whole day with complication like that to go and kill a lot of Muslims and few Jews? And therefore Malta was chosen. By that stage, Malta was not part of the European Union. So people did not need Schengen visa. And what what was done, everybody flew to Malta, and at the airport, they got the visa stamped in the passport. But after the second Malta, they became part of the European Union.
Yeah.
And then the visa problem started because it was very hard to get a Schengen visa for all these countries.
Yeah.
This country does want this one, this country does want this country,
And then it
and
becomes political.
it became very hard. So we were moving around, and the heights of problems with visa happened. In 2011 was declared by the United Nations and UNESCO as the International Year of Chemistry. So UNESCO asked us that they want to invite the Malta Conference to be held in their headquarters as the finale of the International Year of Chemistry. So, but UNESCO is in Paris, and It's a Schengen visa. Very complicated to get for people from this
Yeah.
country. So I had a long talk with UNESCO, and they said, "What do you mean? We are UNESCO. So we will get the visa for everybody." And we planned the conference in UNESCO. It was opened by the Director General of UNESCO, Irina Bokova. It was all the ambassadors to UNESCO who came to the opening ceremony. Prince Hassan, His Royal Highness Prince Hassan from Jordan, King Hussein's brother, gave the first lecture. He participated, was in Malta 4, Malta 5. He became a friend because he supports the Malta. And you mentioned something on education that belongs to all. Prince Hassan gave a talk and said, I got attracted to Zafra because she always says that science education is a human rights that belongs to all. I treat science education as a human rights. Therefore, I developed a way, I'm taking a sidetrack for a minute. I developed a way to teach science through art, music, dance, drama, rap, animation, what you want. So everybody can learn, and it was proven very successful with underprivileged
Yes.
students around the world. It's all described in my book. So it
So,
has
man, that's
chapter.
you've been very busy in your life. So, what year you so I want to go back and talk about your book a little bit because you had mentioned that you were in the streets of the Soviet Union. What country did you visit in the Soviet Union where you were giving these lectures and in the attics and stuff?
Hold on, what countries in the Soviet Union?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you mean by that? Countries that were after the Soviet Union fell became independent country because during the Soviet Union, Ukraine and Belarus and
So
Estonia
the
and
way I kind of
Lithuania, all
view
of them were one country. So what do you,
So the way I
you
kind of view the Soviet Union is a block. It's a collection of countries, just kind of like the United States is. So when the Soviet Union fell, it became
they all became independent, right?
individual states.
Yeah.
So did you visit Russia? I know
For
during the
sure, the
Soviet
main
Union, Russia was
problems
still Russia.
For sure, the main problems were Russia, but I was in Russia, I was in Ukraine, I was in Georgia, and I
That's
was,
awesome. That's awesome. That's so. Is that where your journey first started to become, like the founder of the Malta Conference? And so I guess what I'm asking is like, is the Soviet Union the first stop to where your civil rights and your activism really first started?
yes, correct, correct. So, but it's no, the science diplomacy that I did not call it like that then started really with Albert Einstein Peace Prize Foundation that was established for Einstein's 100th birthday. That was 1979. And people used to ask me, what are you? It was all the people were very well known. They participated in a lot of things and a lot of wealthy people that gave the money. And people asked me, what are you doing there? I said, lowering the average age drastically. But sadly, I cannot do it anymore. To lower the average age drastically. But in the Albert Einstein, it was true. The difference between my age and the rest of them was huge.
Right.
So I said I enjoyed Albert Einstein because I lowered the average age drastically.
That's
So
funny. That's
yeah,
great.
so this was my first activity, and then I then started the Soviet Union and China after Tiananmen Square. I was a lot in China. Eh, And China was much more complicated, I can tell you, than the Soviet
Yeah.
Union and
Yeah.
much
I
more
can I can only
scary.
imagine. It's completely so China and the way China is completely different from from anything I know. Like everything, if I was to visit China, everything would be completely foreign to me. And whereas I could go almost anywhere else in the world and know pretty much what I'm walking into, China, there's not really much information about China these days. It's kind of locked down.
I had been a lot in China, but I saw China developing from when I went in the early 80s, from not having roads, restaurants, shops, everybody on bicycles, everybody wearing a Mao Zedong jacket, men and
Yeah.
women. This was the fashion, nothing. Chinese could not come into the hotels we were in. For a person that like equality, it used to kill me to see the Chinese looking
Yeah.
through the fences like that at us, that we were inside, but there was a tremendous feeling in the country, like building a new country. This is before Tiananmen Square. So there was a tremendous feeling. The only shop that was the friendship shop that was only for tourists. And no restaurants, so we had to eat all our meals in a hotel. If you go now to China, you have 8 lanes every direction in Beijing. The biggest boutiques are there. The women are very, very elegantly dressed. They have the oligarchs. They have, it's a completely different China. But after Tiananmen Square, people were not allowed to talk. I educate Chinese students that study at Northwestern. I live next to Northwestern University about Tiananmen Square. They never heard about it.
Yeah, and isn't that
Never heard
interesting? And
it's
that
not
and that was
allowed.
like I think the Tiananmen protest was like 1989, something like
Correct.
that, right? Yeah.
Correct, 89, exactly that. So, but it's not allowed to mention in China, and they don't teach about that. And when I talk to students, foreign students, and I tell them all about that, they are shocked that they know nothing about that.
Yeah.
But why was it so much harder in China? It's the culture and the fear. In the Soviet Union, despite the oppression and all that, the families were very helpful to give
Yeah.
information, and especially if their loved ones was in a Siberian labor camp. In China, the families didn't want to talk to you. They were very afraid.
Well, and I think they have something. It's like a generational thing, where I forget what they call it, but if one person in your family messes up, then they go 3 generations backwards and 3 generations forward, something like that, to where like you were in a different class or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's
Uh,
called, but I think that it's there's a generational thing where if you're in a certain class of people, there's really no hope of getting out of that certain class, and it's like that in North Korea as well.
Listen, if you're in a certain class, it's hard to get out, even in this country.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. But
Think
here in
about
this
that.
country, we at least have the opportunity to, there's the opportunity for upward mobility here.
Yes.
It could just kind of depends. It is a kind of depend on who you know kind of thing, but and hard work so in 2025 in this country, hard work doesn't always guarantee success. Whereas back before in like the 70s and 80s,
Oh,
it
hard
it
work for
it
sure.
was known, yeah, it was well known that if you work your ass off, you can obtain a better life. And it's infinitely harder these days, but still, this is one of the only countries in the world where you almost have a guarantee of upward mobility.
Yeah, because like in India, you have the Brahmin, they are in the top, and you have the untouchables that are in the bottom.
Yeah.
Untouchables to go up is almost impossible. You are right. And in this country, you can, but I think the opportunities these days are not
Right.
so
They,
many.
they are fewer and farther between than they used to be.
Once it used to be the American dream. I know about a young Palestinian that came by the age of 16, worked in a kitchen of a restaurant, and now not only that he owns this restaurant, he owns many, many more and has an empire now.
And
And
that's the American dream
this
that
is the
used to be
American dream.
attainable. That
This
used
is
to be
the
obtainable
American.
for the average American, but now it's people struggle to obtain that. And I think we've touched on something a little bit because I think education is the key to that. I think there's not a whole lot of so civil we used to teach back in when I was in school, there used to be like a civics class, and to work, each citizen would know exactly the role of the government and the role of the people, and we used to learn about those things. They don't learn about that in school now, and there's so many things that have been our history classes aren't as important. There's not as enough emphasis on our history classes these days, and science and technology. While those are growing, there's not enough emphasis on the building blocks of science and technology. Everybody wants to start way up here when they need to start at the bottom and kind of learn about everything and go up. And for me, it's like the American dream used to be where you could absolutely start you're in a kitchen and work your way up, and that's how most people did things back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But now it's like these kids coming out of colleges almost demand to start at the top, right? And it causes a huge issue in that they don't remember how we got here, and they don't remember the sacrifice and education, like people such as yourself going out and sharing knowledge and saying, hey everyone, this is something that we can gather around to start the conversation so we can all get along, and nobody's doing that anymore.
It's very sad. Our education is public schools. It really depends where you live.
Yeah.
The NSF, National Science Foundation, gave me a lot of money to take my method that I developed to teach in college for non-science majors into the Chicago public schools and help the teachers to teach this way so the students will be attracted to science. But the teachers by themselves, their science background was very little because, the education school, it's much cheaper for a university to give a lot of courses in education and psychology. You could put 300 students in one room with one adjunct professor, pay them peanuts. You make a lot of money because you have a lot of students, but you cannot do it in science. You need labs. And in a
Yes.
lab, it's too dangerous to put a lot of people in a lab. Labs have to have small groups. So it's much more expensive. And with that, I blame the universities because they are the ones that should understand that the people that come out from an education department should have a good background in science, or if somebody is going to teach science, they should have a degree in science. And in the Chicago public school, for sure it doesn't agree. But where I live in Evanston, Illinois, that is next to Northwestern, it was selected as one of the best places in the world to live and one of the most educated places. Uh, Most of the teachers in this high school even have PhDs. And when I was once interviewed on ABC, they used to have a problem, someone you should know. So they interviewed me as someone you should know and showed how I taught the teachers through all this art,
Yeah, and
science.
that's another great point. The teachers don't know anything these days. Like they're not educated. And they're not even educated on how to teach. It's like so our local public schools here, that we have a school district, and in that school district, they dictate where like all of one single curriculum for the entire district, and teachers are required to stick to that curriculum that the school district built for them. And so essentially the school district is not allowing the teachers to do the teaching. The school district wants to do the teaching. And they say stick to this curriculum or you'll be fired. So it took power right out of the teachers' hands. They're not allowed to teach it differently. And they're not allowed to even connect with students to find a different way to teach them if they're failing.
This is one of the biggest problems, and therefore, good teachers don't want to stay in the profession because, look, if I would not have a president of the university that said to me, "I know nothing about, I'm not a scientist," you built from scratch a science department, science, it became a science institute, do
Right.
what you want, I never would be able to develop all these methods. And then, in order to show that it's really serious science, my members of my committee of scientific freedom and human rights subcommittee were the chair of the chemistry department in Indiana University, one of the big 10, and the chairman of chemistry in Princeton. I persuaded them that we all should develop a course that will be the same course taught in the three institutions for non-science majors, following my methods. And the National Science Foundation gave us money to develop it, called their flagship project. And my idea was that all the fancy or private university will say, if Princeton will doing it, maybe we should do it for our non-science major. And all the state school will say, Indiana University is doing it. We should see what they are doing. Maybe it's good. And then the rest of them will look what we are doing.
Right.
And it was very successful. And in order to prove that my inner city minority students, all non-science majors that never were on a plane, are second to none, they flew to Princeton every year for a joint symposium. And the media would come and would call it a meeting of two cultures, because it was a meeting of two cultures. Those people came from the south and the inner city, but even that you could see after everybody showed their project on a scientific subject, and really my students were second to none. We had, after the dinner together, after a while it was one family. Again, you could
Yeah.
maybe distinguish who was Princeton and who was my student from Columbia College Chicago, was maybe by color, but
Yeah.
otherwise they were one group. They were talking to each other like they knew each other forever.
Yeah, and I talk a lot on the podcast about finding common ground, and so a lot of I think the internet and social media has made us too comfortable with talking down to each other if we disagree, and so the problem I see with a lot of people is they don't look at the person they're speaking to as human. Like, we don't carry on conversations like this much anymore, and so I always talk about bringing a dialogue, open and honest dialogue to every conversation, and letting people know, hey, it's okay that we disagree. Like, we're never going to agree on everything. We can disagree on things without being hateful. We can
Correct.
disagree on things without arguing and yelling and all of that stuff. Like what we need is calm, rational conversations. And like if we have a disagreement, well, let's talk about it. You know what? Why do we disagree? Are we too far apart on this disagreement that we're never going to agree? Like in that case, maybe we should talk about something else that we do agree on and start the conversation there so that we can branch out into other things while being nice at the same time.
It's correct because it became, even in this country, it's so polarized that it's very hard to talk to the other side.
Very, very,
Very
it is
hard.
very hard. And I find it difficult for me to like, so I'm not what they would, I'm what they consider right now, right leaning politically. Um, but I didn't used to be. I used to be known as like a lefty, you know. But
You look
the
like a lefty.
thank you, thank you. Um, the my problem became like as I get older, some of my views on different things change, and not for any other reason, but like sometimes it is just status quo. You know, sometimes I do vote for my status quo, but sometimes find it difficult to articulate the reason why I am the way I am. And like if we could just talk about these small little things without the hateful rhetoric that we seem to have these days. If we could just talk without all that, I think we'd get a lot accomplished.
Oh, for sure. But there are people that are very close to me, and I have an agreement with them that we don't discuss the politics of the US.
Yeah.
The whole world. I'm ready to discuss the politics of Russia, Ukraine, all the Middle East, China, but not the politics of the US. I don't want to get aggravated. I don't want the other people. And then, the voice start getting higher and higher because you think that if your voice is higher, you are more persuasive with your point of view. So I have an agreement. We can discuss the politics of the whole world, excluding the US.
That's a
This I
good
don't
policy.
want to discuss. I
That's a
don't
good
want.
policy. If you remember, back in, before these newer generations, back when people used to talk to each other, it was like an unspoken agreement. We don't talk about religion and we don't talk about politics. And that used to be like a polite thing to do. But I think the more we try to avoid those subjects and more we try to avoid talking about them, that's how the division really started, is because we did refuse to talk about politics for so long that, like mom and dad didn't articulate the reason why they feel the way they do on certain subjects. They just dictated to the children how they should feel, which made the children mad. And now the children grow up feeling the opposite as mom and dad, and they don't. Nobody talks about it, and and it's splitting up families nowadays.
Sure, politics split up a lot of families,
Yeah,
but religions, I like to talk. I
yeah,
like to talk to different religions very much. This is one thing I enjoy because
yeah.
bottom
I kind
line,
of,
all the religion, the three Abrahamic religions are coming from the same source. So it's very interesting to me. And I'll give you an example. When I was at Cornell, there was somebody that worked at Cornell, but he was a Baptist minister, and he invited me to come to his church, and they were reading Isaiah. And there was a sentence that they read, and they had a big discussion on that, and they read, and it said, here is the virgin pregnant, and she will have a son. And his name will be Emmanuel. And there was a lot of discussion how Isaiah predicted the here is the virgin pregnant and she will have a son, how he predicted the birth of Jesus. And it was very interesting for me because it's a wrong translation. Because what it says really in the Bible is in Hebrew, here, הנה העלמה הרה ויולדת בן. Alma, what they translated to virgin is not. Virgin is ptula. Alma is a young girl. So when you translate the word Alma, what is a young girl, to virgin, Isaiah predicted the birth of Jesus. No, Isaiah was talking about the birth of his own son. But, but so for me, it's very interesting in going. I was in mosques, I was in a lot of different Christian because I'm interested
Yeah, yeah.
in hearing all that.
Let me
And
ask you this. Let me ask you this. How do you how do you feel about UFOs?
UFOs, I wish they would be real. It sounds so nice. And I remember that at Northwestern, the professor, the head of the astronomy department, I think he was fired at the end because he was so strongly pro UFO that they had really, they had, but I remember he gave a lecture, and my son was 11 then. And we came to the lecture, and he was talking about the UFOs, and it's all real, and they were here. And then my son raised his hand, and I almost died. Everybody was there from Northwestern. I walked there. I was in the chemistry department, and professors and graduate students, and he raises his hand, the first one. And he said to him, "What's your question?" And he said, one thing I don't understand, if they are so smart that they can come and visit us, why do they always land in an invisible place? Why don't they land in a place that somebody can see them landing?
Right,
And
right.
he took him off guard, and he did not know what to answer. And I was embarrassed as a professor by myself to hear an answer like that from a professor. He answered him at the end, "Why don't blueberries grow in the cities?" Or some answer like that. And this really shook the whole issue because the answer was very, he didn't know what to answer.
Yeah, yeah.
So you
And
answer,
so the
why
reason
don't the
why
blueberries grow in the middle of the city?
I ask how you feel about UFOs is because I personally think that a lot of the religious texts from ancient times are mistranslated. I think there's evidence of UFOs in the Bible, for instance.
I'm trying to think because I know the Bible very well.
The only Bible I know,
You know,
honestly,
the,
is I
the New Testament.
yes, yes, and I think
And what
there's
I know is
examples.
the Old Testament.
Yes,
But we have to be careful what we relate to the Bible.
exactly, exactly. So the Bible that I know talks about like there's different examples of like let's just say like the burning bush and Ezekiel's wheel and things like that. I think some of those instances may actually be UFOs or you know esoteric happenings that were mistranslated, and now we attribute to religion what we should be attributing to science.
Eh, I'm staying away from this. First, because we talk about we don't know the different Bibles. I don't know the New Testament, so
Right, right.
I don't
Yeah.
know, and I know very well the Old Testament, but I don't know the New Testament, so I don't want to react to things that I don't know what you're what
Yeah, I'm just speculating
yeah, but
myself
I
personally.
would not react to that because I
Yeah, that's
don't have
cool.
the knowledge. You want to talk to me about what you call Old Testament and I call the Bible, it's another story. But all the religions come from the same origin. I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
say Jesus was born he was born Jewish. Probably today he would be considered a Reform rabbi, but by those days there were not Reform rabbis. So I feel we're different than what the line was. I don't know what they called it, but Jesus was a religious Jew. And
Yes.
so for sure, Christianity is built on a lot of what Judaism is built.
Absolutely. And that's actually what I've been taught my whole life. So, and I grew up in a Midwestern church, Southern
You are
Baptist.
from the Midwest?
Yes. I'm actually not too far from you. I'm actually just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Kansas City.
Oh, you are
So,
in the
y-
Midwest.
yeah. So I'm actually probably, I don't know how far Evanston is from us, but it's probably only like 9 hours, something
Oh,
like that.
I think even less. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Chicago is about 8 hours from us. So,
Evanston is there is Howard Street, that one side is Chicago and one side is Evanston. And
okay. Okay.
tell me, Evanston was dry for not till maybe the 80s. You could not sell alcohol in Evanston.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was told that the Howard Street, the Chicago side, not the Evanston side, all the bars and all the most wonderful things were in Chicago on the Howard Street because this is where all of Evanston could have gone because Evanston did not have any alcohol, was dry. Because
Yeah.
the headquarters of these women, I don't know, was in Evanston. So it was,
Believe it or not, there's still places out there like that.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's places in Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas. There's still places all around. They're still like that.
Oh, interesting.
It is interesting, and so I also find interesting is so your new book is it's a memoir. Is that right?
It's a memoir. I was under pressure to write many years a book on my education system. And it's very funny because if you go on Amazon, they have the name like the book was published because we tried to write it together, the chair of Princeton and the chair of Indiana and I, but we were too busy and never finished this book. It's titled From Ozone to Oil Spill, but on Amazon it looks like it's there. So we didn't have the time. I didn't have the time running in the Soviet Union, doing that. It's just impossible. So I was all the time under pressure to write I published, scientists publish articles usually.
Yes, yes,
So I have a lot of articles that every day I see there is something academia that they tell me every day who is still reading my articles. But in the book I did not write. And then my experiences in the Soviet Union, those were very interesting experiences. I had to come always with a group of scientists as my cover up. And during the day, we were guests of universities and giving lecture. And then at dinner time, I would tell a person that looks to me that will not talk and will not be scared because a lot of Americans were scared of my activities that they will be arrested. So I would look. In China, it happened to me. They screamed at me that I will get all of them to jail. So I looked, and I would say, if I'm not here for breakfast tomorrow morning, just call the American embassy and disappear after midnight. Now, how could I go alone in the Soviet Union? Because I met Andrei Sakharov, that was the most famous dissident, because I see that a lot of the young generation don't know anymore who's Andrei Sakharov. Therefore, I'm saying he was the most famous dissident. And I met with him, and we had a translator. But I met him in the Albert Einstein Peace Prize because we gave him the Peace Prize.
Yeah.
So he told me that if I really want to be successful in human rights, I cannot use a translator because all of them will be KGB. So he suggested that I take a crash course in Russian before I go back. And this is what I did. So therefore, I could go by myself and did not need a translator because even the in tourist guides were KGB. Everybody was KGB. So,
Right. It's probably still like that now.
oh, now it's worse.
They don't call it the KGB, they call it the FSB now, but
FSB,
yeah.
it's the same. Look, Putin is a KGB person, so
Right.
it's
And I'm actually very intrigued by Soviet and Russian culture. So I'm one of those rah rah go USA Americans. I'm a very patriotic guy. And when I was a kid, I was born in '85. So that was like the height of the United States war,
right.
the Cold War. And so when the Soviet Union fell, I remember that. I remember when the Soviet Union fell. I remember um, the propaganda movies like Rocky Four, where the Sylvester Stallone's fighting the big Russian guy. And that was like that shaped my childhood. And so I'm very intrigued by the culture. And as a matter of fact, I have a Russian friend who I talk to all the time about Russian culture and Ukrainian culture and how I'm very intrigued because their culture is actually not that different from ours. It's just very
Oh,
different
good.
political beliefs.
Oh, the Russian culture is unbelievable. The literature that came out of Russia,
And the
the mu-
art.
and the music, and listen, the ballet. Nobody can compete with the Russian ballet. Their culture.
Oh, I know this for sure. I've actually went and saw the Nutcracker, the Russian ballet do the Nutcracker at it down in Nashville.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I went and
I've
saw
been a
that.
lot in the Soviet Union, but then in Russia till a few years ago. I was invited every year in St. Petersburg, from my point of view, is the most beautiful city I'd seen. It's like French architecture with the Venice Canal. It's just out of this built world. And I am a night person. And in St. Petersburg, you have the white nights in summer where the sun barely goes down. So the day
Yes.
very long, and I'm a night person, so I was so happy. It was day, but it's a beautiful city, and the Mariinsky Ballet, what used to be called the Kirov Ballet, this ballet and the Bolshoi Ballet are the two best ballets in the world. So
Yes.
every year to go to see this ballet, it was, but sadly, not sadly that I received the Andrei Sakharov Award for my work on human rights a few years ago. And sadly, after that, I started having problems getting a visa to go to Russia.
Yes, that's what my friend and I often talk about is I would love to visit Russia one day. I would love to
Oh,
go hang out in Russia, but I just right now it doesn't seem possible right at this moment. There's a lot of
no, how
tensions
you
between
cannot.
Russia and the United
No,
States.
no, you cannot go now. But they blocked me 4 years ago, and when I talked to somebody in Washington that are experts on Russia, they said, "Don't go." In the Soviet Union, if you would be caught, you would go to jail. Now that you got the Andrei Sakharov Prize and everything you did is public, with
Yes.
Putin, you will disappear. You know?
Yes. And if you don't disappear, you'll become a political prisoner.
Yeah, so the suggestion, I was very sad because every year I was invited and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And but
And
because
I hear actually the same thing is happening in China currently. If you visit China
China
and yeah.
has problems too because of all the things I did there. And I was on their national television because we had a conference on public understanding of science immediately after Tiananmen Square, and I was one of the plenary lecturer. And I started my lecture by first I met with people that I should not have met in China. But in my lecture, I gave them a lecture, gave them a lot of compliments, how China was developed since I came the first time. And by that time, it was the fifth time, how it was developed. And I said it's a compliment to all the scientists that contributed to all this development and their students. And I said, many of them are my friends, and I invited them to come to my lecture, but sadly, they are still in jail after Tiananmen Square. So I want to use this opportunity to call for their release, and I want to dedicate my lecture to all the scientists and the students that are still in jail. All the American in the audience did like that, took their
Oh,
head, took their head down and disappeared. All the Chinese in the audience showed me thumb up.
yeah. Hey, I'm one of those that thumbs up. That was
But oh my God, there was those Americans really did not like what I did. They were afraid that all Americans will be arrested. And then after that, the China television interviewed me. I had the opportunity to be on national China television, national Cuba television, national South Africa television, because they had human rights problems. So in Cuba, I was afraid when I will come back. GW was the president, and then they were very tough on Cuba. In here, I'm
yes.
on their national television, and then they made me an honorary member of the Cuban Chemical Society. So, yeah.
And actually, we just opened up um our markets back up to Cuba not too long ago. Was it back 2012, something like that? We
I,
started
but
working with Cuba again.
But I think it's changed again now.
Has it? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't for sure on that. That
Uh,
sucks.
Barack opened everything,
Yes,
and
yes.
it was much easier to go to Cuba, and it was not a crime to go. But I think it,
That's changed since then.
yeah,
That sucks because you know
it's
you used to be
Barack
able to.
that opened it. Barack Obama opened all that. Yeah,
I think that was fantastic because
oh sure.
not only did they get to experience our markets again, but we could go there. We could go hang out there and we could bring home like Cuban cigars and stuff that,
So
like
let me tell you a story. I used to take delegation of ACS, American Chemical Society. I took 7 delegation to Cuba to participate in their chemical society conferences. And I remember that in one of them, we did not have an ambassador. We had a person for the American. I don't remember how they called all that. It was like an ambassador. There was like an embassy. He had like an ambassador residence, but you could not call it
Like a
ambassador.
chaperone, like a chaperone.
It's something American interest, the American interest. It was called the American interest. So he invited my group for a reception. That week, Detroit laid off 100,000 people. When
Wow.
the first time I took a delegation to Cuba was in 98, all the cars were old American cars from the
Yes.
60s, colored in yellow and blue and green and red and in all, I was not in the US, but the Americans all ran crazy because they were taxis, this car. So every block they wanted a taxi just to sit in these cars from the 50s. And they
Yes.
beautiful, and the size of them. And
I'm
we
one of those people that would do that. I'm one of
they
those, I totally one of those people that would do that.
looked like chitty chitty bang bang, like we just can fly. But when every time I came again, there were more joint venture. I liked when we came before there were joint venture, and every our meeting was in they have a replica of the Capitol. So because the communists did not use it, they had their own headquarters with a picture of Che Guevara outside. So our conference was in the Capitol, and we sat like the senators there. It was beautiful. But then they built a fancy convention center and all that. So I liked it when it was new. Then the joint venture came with five-star hotel with crazy
Yeah.
swimming pools in different shape. We stayed the first time in the Ambus Mundus, where in room 511, Hemingway wrote the book To Whom Did the Bell Toll. And his typewriter is still there and everything. They kept this room like
Wow.
a museum. And the elevator had needed an operator with a wheel that did like that. I liked it very much. But,
I'm now hearing you talk about it. I'm like, there's another place I gotta go.
oh
So
God.
hopefully they open it back up and I'm allowed to go down there one day.
You can go with an education groups. They allow education. There are groups that go with different titles. So these groups can go. If you can find a group like that, I'm going to organize, I think, soon a group too, because we were, I received a big award in New York in March, the International Advocate for Peace Award that before me, Jimmy Carter got it, Bill Clinton, Bishop Tutu. It was a very big award. And one of my friends is a director in Broadway. So the day after that, he took us a group of people that attend the Renaissance weekend. I don't know if you know the Renaissance weekend. They used to show how Clinton goes to Hilton Head for the New Year Renaissance weekend. It's by invitation only. So we are a very close group.
Right.
So people came from all over the country for my award. So he managed to get tickets for us to the play that got a lot of Tony Awards, Bona Vista Social Club. And this is a Cuban music group that played in the Nacional Hotel. And then they talked about the Tropicana. And I had been in all these places. So I promised this group that I will organize to Cuba so we can see now everything we saw on the play. But when we went, when Detroit laid off 100,000 people, the cars were no more the old American cars. They were Renault, Peugeot, you did not see anymore. So I said to him, I said, can you explain to me who suffers from the embargo? Go to Cuba for many years, I said. Now, suddenly all the cars, Renault and Peugeot, it's a long distance. If we would not have embargo, there would be Ford and Chevy.
Yes. Yes.
Meanwhile, the embargo caused 100,000 people to lose their jobs. That if we would relationship, it's only 90 miles and the cars would be bought from the US. So
Yes.
who is suffering from the embargo, tell me? And he did not know what to answer.
And that's exactly why Obama opened it back up
Oh,
and removed
sure.
that.
But they closed it. No, it was closed by the first Trump administration already. So
no, no
now,
kidding.
now Cuba, I think, is one of the countries that Trump even put a ban on coming into the US.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You know what? I pay attention a lot to politics and I did not know that. That sucks, man. That really sucks because I like I remember talking to my wife when they lifted the embargo, and I was like, "Great, we can get Cuban cigars now." And you know, like my knowledge of Cuban culture is very limited, so I only know about the cars and the food, and of course, what you know down in Cuba they have like world class health and medical services down there. So
And education,
yes, yes, that's
but
another one.
medical is world class. One thing that people did not know that during all these years they had there was an arrangement that medical students were shadowing medical doctors in Cuba.
I
And
didn't know
this
that.
was legal. No, it was kept big secret, but yes, medical students spend time in Cuba
That's
shadowing.
amazing. That's amazing. Like I had no
They
idea.
have they have around 40 terrific research centers on
Yes.
technology and things like that, and they produce uh, medication that they are selling very cheap, but we cannot get them in Europe.
Right.
They use them. But when I was there the first time in 98, I saw a lot of Americans that told me the hell when we come back they can throw us to jail, but they came for treatment in Cuba, and one woman told me that she was paralyzed and could not walk, and she was completely healed
Wow.
with drugs that were developed in Cuba.
Wow. You know where I learned about the world-class medical and health system in Cuba? I learned it from a movie, an old
Which,
James Bond movie.
oh, really?
Yes, yes. So back when Pierce Brosnan was 007, he did a movie where they did some kind of surgical, like face surgery, cosmetic surgery in Cuba. And then in that movie, they discussed how Cuba really actually has world-class medical care. And so
Yeah,
I did some research, and that's actually true that
true.
there's world-class medical
They are
care in
very well
Cuba.
known about that. And therefore, for years, there was a center during all the years of embargo for US medical students to shadow medical doctors in Cuba. And
That's
their
awesome.
education is very good too. They are very good in education, their schools.
Well, you know what, Zafra? I think so the name of your memoir is Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey. Where can people find that book?
The book is, thank God, just came in paperback because they sold it very expensive. Now it's in paperback in regular price. It's on Amazon. You can order it. They have it in stock. and it's a memoir that describes all my growing up as a child and the values that were instilled with me that brought me to the situation of risking my own life in Soviet Union for people that I had never met, but that shared similar values that I shared, and therefore I was ready to risk my life to help them. And then it describes my method of teaching that again come from the conviction that science education is a human right that belongs to everybody, and it describes it in detail. And then it's going into my work for human rights in the different countries. And then it goes into the Malta conferences and all the challenges of getting a visa. It describes the sleepless nights for months in order to make sure that everybody can come. And there is no country that is really wanting everybody. In 1915, after the experience with UNESCO, that at the end the Iranians did not get visas, so they told me everybody will get. I said, enough. I'm going to Washington, I'm going to every embassy, and I'll say, here is my list. Will you give me a visa for everybody? Most of the ambassadors said no, but the
Yeah.
Moroccan ambassador said yes. So I was visiting him regularly in Washington, and we were planning and doing and all that. The conference was supposed to be, I think, December or November. And in May, he informed me that Iraq and Syria cannot enter. I said, what do you mean? You told me everybody. He said, I'm sorry. This was the period of ISIS. I
Yeah.
flew to Morocco. I met with the highest non-political person in the foreign ministry. She said, no, we cannot give them a visa. And then it's like a James Bond story how I got this visa for them. In the last minute, the conference, already the reception started. The Iraqis called me. I was in Morocco. They called me and said, we are getting on the plane without visa. And the book describes all my effort and ingenuity, what I had to do in order for everybody to come in and get a visa. But it's nerve-wracking, nerve-wracking.
I bet. And I've got to get your book
If you
because
can see it,
absolutely. Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey. That's awesome.
you see,
Yes. Yes.
the picture is just taken by my former student in my office. It's even not a professional studio that it's in my office. My student took it.
It's
And
a very good picture.
everybody says it's a very good picture.
I like it. Yeah, I've got to get a copy of your book because I just hearing you speak about some of these experiences, it does sound a bit like you had to do some Bond movie 007 type stuff to get some of this stuff happening. And I'm just thank you actually for not only the sacrifices that you've made in the past, but the sacrifices you continue to make to bring this to the forefront in a conversation where people open and honest dialogue is very important to me. And as you said, science education belongs to the people. It's a human right.
It's for sure a human right.
And I'm very impressed by not only your intelligence, but also like your intestinal fortitude. You've got balls, and I appreciate that.
Chutzpah.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Well, I think this is a good point to close out the conversation. I'd love to do it again sometime. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, let's hook up and you can do it here in the studio.
Okay. And if you happen to be in this area, give me a call. I would love to continue to sit and talk to you about different
That's
subjects
awesome.
concerning even religion.
Hey, whatever works. I like this has been such a great conversation. I think we actually probably have a lot more in common than we don't. And that's another reason why I like to have the show, the podcast here is because most people I talk to, like we have more in common than we don't.
We
And
have, all of us, one thing in common is humanity.
there you go. There you go. That's right. And with that, Zafra, we'll close out the show. And your book is Human Rights and Peace: A Personal Odyssey, and you can find that on Amazon. Do you
On
have a website?
Amazon, and I will appreciate if everybody that gets it will write a review on Amazon, short review, because then the algorithm will bring it up. One thing I forgot to say, all the proceeds of the book are not going for me, are going for the Malta Conferences for the Middle Eastern people.
That's awesome. That is
So I
awesome.
don't get a penny. So therefore, as more books are being sold, it's helping us with the with trying to bring peace through science diplomacy.
That's awesome. And do you guys have a website?
Oh yes, sorry. Our website is Malta Conferences Foundation.org. My personal website is zafralerman.com. My name.com.
And
And
then
if
we'll link.
anybody wants to contact me, my email is again my name, safra@safralerman.com.
So what we'll do is we'll link all that stuff in the description down below. Hey guys, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for stopping in. Bye.